Welcome to the Dreams of Consciousness podcast. If you'd be so kind, would you mind introducing yourselves?
Hi, this is Van from the band Nite.
Hello, this is Scott from Nite.
Van and Scott, welcome. First of all, how would you describe the music of Nite? What would you say what kind of music would you say you guys make?
If it was if it was me, I would say we play heavy metal music, but in 2022. But that doesn't make sense to most people. So I think black and heavy metal makes most sense because we have coupled traditional heavy metal, like old school, classic, vintage 80s heavy metal, with black and vocals or black metal vocals. So I guess black and heavy metal makes the most sense.
Scott, do you want to add to that?
No, I think that sums it up. Yeah, just classic heavy metal with a different vocal approach.
Okay. Would you say that, because there are a number of hybridized genres, black and roll is a subgenre these days. There's also a kind of black and crust punk sound that's been happening for the last decade. When you talk about the heavy metal approach that's integral to your sound, what specifically are you referring to? Is there a way to describe that?
When you say the heavy metal approach, I mean, I guess we would think of it as the riffing style and just the atmosphere of classic, the pillars of 80s metal, like Iron Maiden and Metallica, and kind of the big headline names and other things too. But just speaking broadly, that spirit and that kind of accessibility, to use maybe a loaded word, just that it's immediate and it's catchy and it's it's easy to grasp and direct, and then combining that with like the blackened element, with a more up-to-date vocal style, kind of brings it forward and keeps it from being a retro or a backward-looking sound.
And there's a heavy Priest, Judas Priest influence on your music as well, right?
Yeah, you could say that. I don't think it's intentional, but I think I hear the similarities. I don't think that was a plan.
Okay. I mean, as far as plans go, what were your guys' intentions when you originally put this together?
Do you mean when we put the band, when we first started playing?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. The intention was to play the heavy metal music that we like, but make it relevant for now, kinda. So, the music that at least we grew up with, I personally felt that it was not out there, like in the now. Like I can always go back and listen to Somewhere in Time and Parslave and all that, but I'm not really excited about a new band that plays something that is close to that. And yeah, I felt the need to fill that gap, me personally, and I'm sure that we all have different motives behind it, but that. So yeah, another part of it is that me personally, again, I've been to many bands before this one, and it might sound stupid, but I never really got to play guitar leads the way I wanted to play guitar leads. It was always kind of like a tiny moment in a death metal band or something like that. But I wanted to just play guitar leads, like be in a setting that I can freely play whatever guitar lead I can. I want to play. So yeah, that was also a huge motivation to go back to that era of heavy metal, because I just love playing guitar and I love playing that kind of guitar.
Scott, as the other guitarist, do you want to add anything to that?
I mean, Van, I like that he brought up that point, because he is the main lead player, and I think that style is great to kind of bring back. Not that it ever went away. I mean, obviously tons of bands play guitar leads, but a lot of the more modern metal has moved towards a very technical direction it's maybe less melodic. And what I personally like about our style, and especially Van's lead playing, is kind of it makes me think of, again, the influences that we grew up with without being a copy. So, you know, it has Megadeth sounds, it has Iron Maiden sounds, and it's tuneful and exciting and you know, melodic, and it's great to play in a band that showcases that kind of lead playing.
As far as that goes, do you feel that as metal moved into these more speed oriented, extreme directions, that the focus moved away from the guitars, more towards maybe the drum techniques like blast beats and things like that, and that the guitars were more prominent in that era of heavy metal?
Oh, somewhat, or at least a style of guitar. I mean, obviously the guitar is still central to almost all types of heavy metal, even now, and all the extreme forms and death metal and grindcore. But it's, you know, it's not as melodic, and it's more brutal, it's more percussive, certainly rhythmically complex, and often you know, just overall complex to play. But it doesn't have the same you know, sort of melodic and harmonic sensibility that maybe the 80s style had. So it's just more of a swapping of, like you said, I think that what you said is somewhat accurate, where the drums maybe took more of a prominent role in the rhythms, the extreme rhythms were in the driver's seat.
I wanna chime in on that. For me, like the way I experienced it when I was growing up in the 80s and 90s, anyway, there was a very clear moment when Nevermind came out that guitar leads became not cool. Like it was a clear moment that we went from everybody shredding like crazy, like even the most random person in the guitar center of at the time would like be a huge shredder, to not being okay playing leads live. And I think that had a huge impact on the scene. I mean, I even know like people like Steve Vai was like bullied, you know, and made fun of, like like one of the most prominent guitar personalities was like bullied because he had that guitar lead style, which is ridiculous. But that goes to show how much that new genre like affected metal, which I really don't appreciate that happened, because I don't see any similarities between grunge and heavy metal music. But anyway, fast forward 30 years later, or like 20 years later or so, I think it became more, the scene kind of calmed down. And for again, how I saw this happening, I think Meshuggah brought something back, in my opinion, that was gone. Like, so I think that Frederick's guitar leads that were so far out and so Holdsworthy, like, kind of shook things up, at least for me and the people who I know in the scene. So anyway, I feel that we're gradually getting back there. Like, I feel like the 80s are becoming more like cooler than they were at some point. So, or the people who grew up in the 80s turned 40 and they don't give a fuck anymore, like, which is my case. I don't really care if people like hearing solos. Like, if they can change the channel if they don't like them. I like playing them, so I'm gonna keep playing them.
I mean, I'll chime in on that point as well. I'm going to be 43 soon, and I definitely remember growing up in the 90s. There was a lot of shaming around, you know, almost people being too good at guitar. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And obviously, as both of you guys are guitarists, you probably have strong feelings about that. But I do remember that the mainstream had veered towards, you know, not just grunge, but the pop punk thing that came out a little bit later. And even within the world of like alternative and, you know, mainstream rock at the time, the trend was towards very simple chord progressions and, you know, these kind of groove type bands. Um, and Meshuggah definitely were incredible musicians, and I think that steered people back towards being very serious about guitar. I mean, my memory is, as somebody who grew up on, a lot of the bands that you mentioned, Megadeth, Iron Maiden, stuff like that. Once the melodic death metal thing started becoming more popular, there was this kind of rediscovery of twin guitar leads in that very classic heavy metal sense. And at least for me personally, and some of the people within my peer group, it led to a new appreciation of classic heavy metal as far as like Priest and Maiden and stuff like that.
Definitely. I think it's a great point. And like I guess what's the stock line that the heyday of the Gothenburg scene, In Flames and Dark Tranquillity, etc. It was basically playing Iron Maiden at at double speed, but which was great. I mean, and I think you're right that if you came into metal more around that time, and that's honestly where a lot of my formative time was spent. It was a great window into like, oh, where does this come from? And then you eventually follow the breadcrumbs back to Maiden and Priest and so forth. But it was kind of a blending of what was happening then with the old melodies. So great point.
So Van, it sounds like you had a pretty good idea of what kind of music you wanted to make, as far as Nite's sound. As far as assembling the band, how did the four of you guys eventually come together?
Yeah, it happened that we all met in the Bay Area. I mean, I started writing some songs back in 2017, and I did some demos, and I started trying to find people, and I had moved from Germany. Like I lived in Germany for 10 years until 2015, and then I briefly moved to LA, and then moved up here in the Bay Area. So I was kind of starting fresh anyway. So yeah, I basically met like with a lot of like very random people that I met online and stuff, and I tried for a year to find the right people, and it wasn't happening. And then at some point I met Pat and our original bass player Brian through a friend of mine from Germany, and that was the first time that I tried it with actually people that I had some connection to anyway. And we went from there. Then Scott came in, I think, a year later after, if I'm not wrong, right?
Yeah.
A year later after me, Pat, and Brian started this. So yeah, we just I say the short answer is that we met through friends of friends in the Bay Area, and yeah, the vision was there, but it definitely shifted towards something that not that fits all of us basically. So yeah, I had an idea, but the guys really made it their own. Pat really changed the way we're going about drums, and Scott had the same effect on the guitar, and yeah, that's how we happened.
Scott, do you want to add to that?
No, I mean that's a good summary. Then more recently, right kind of towards the middle end of the first phase of the pandemic, we brought in Avinash on bass. So he's the quote unquote new guy, but that is working out great as well. And he's the younger member, so he's given us we benefit from his energy because we're all about your age, and it's nice to have a younger perspective. So.
And what is that younger perspective? I mean, I can say from my end, I'm sometimes a little bit taken aback by how much, a much younger generation, and I'm talking like, 15, 20 years younger than me. I mean, I would say that thrash was still fairly prominent when I got into bands like Metallica and Megadeth, and so it was no real surprise for someone my age to be into those bands. But I'm always a little bit surprised when kids a lot younger discover stuff like say Maiden or Candlemass or any of those classic 80s thrash bands. As
Sure.
far as Avinash goes, what is this energy that you're referring to?
Yeah, I mean, he's amazingly well. I guess almost like an old soul as far as like his breadth and width of metal knowledge. So I don't want to sell him short as far as like, he's definitely by age, a decade or so younger than us, but he knows everything, and I think he really has, whether this is age related or just his personality, he just has huge amounts of energy and drive, and I'm personally always impressed by it. And he also is just a great networker, and he's one of those people who seems to know everyone, and everyone loves him, which is great. And that's how I got to be friends with him, and before he was in the band. But yeah, to your point, I often wonder if that sort of knowledge that people that maybe didn't come up with the same things that we came up with, if just the internet has leveled the playing field, and you kind of can find things pretty quickly, and kind of follow the thread through, like, oh, what's this, what's doom, what's black thrash, you can kind of explore things more quickly, and maybe get a crash course in a lot of different things, whereas we had to go a more manual way with zines and actual record stores.
Yeah, I always make the point that my metal knowledge was sparsed off, or my metal education, I guess I should say, was spread out over 15 years of buying magazines. So I only ever found out about the history of metal like 1 month at a time. Do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I couldn't just sit in front of YouTube for 12 hours straight and discover the entire history of doom metal or thrash or whatever.
Exactly.
To follow up on something Van said, as far as the sound of the band taking shape as the various members joined, can you tell me a little bit about the songwriting process and how you guys actually put songs together?
Yeah, what we do is that basically we just write songs. I know it sounds stupid, but or simple, but that's what we do. Like, we just write whatever comes, like whatever riff, whatever idea, and it's very hard to judge something in the moment. Like, there are so many times that I demo something, and then I think, like, oh my god, this is the coolest thing ever, and then I play it back the next day. I was like, I'm not even gonna play it for the for the guys, like, it's not gonna, like, what was I thinking? So we do demo a lot of songs, and we all write ideas and stuff, and then we listen to them. We're not one of those bands that jams in the practice space and comes up with riff that way. I don't think we have the the time to do that. It would take years for us to come up with a couple of songs like that. So I don't know. I'm just messing around, but what we do is that we just demo a lot of songs through the year, and then the coolest songs kind of stand out to all of us. We might have certain songs that only one of us likes, but the songs that overlap with all of us, I think, are a clear sign that they are the ones that we should go forward, because at the end of the day, we're all going to be playing them. So it doesn't matter if, like, I like one song, or if Pat likes one song, or with Scott, and then we try to trim the fat, like we try to narrow them down even further. So we usually start with like 30 or 25 or so, and then we quickly go down to 14, 12, 10, 8. With 8, I think, is a number we feel comfortable working with on albums. We tried doing 9 in the past, but it was just too long. And yeah, when we narrow down the 8 demos that we want to do, then we just start, like, focusing and just, I mean, we used to be able to play them. For the last album, we didn't get to play play the songs because of the pandemic, but what we would normally do would be to just start practicing those 8 songs and make changes and finalize the tempos and finalize the structures, and then work on the lyrics and all that. So it's a very methodical process. It's not like I feel that we have done it enough to. There's no guesswork there. We have to just put in the hours and put in the work. Like there's no, I'm not inspired, like, or Scott is not into it, or something. But if we put in the hours, the songs are gonna come. Like in 1 year, we can definitely write one album. We just need to show up.
Scott, did you want to add to that?
I mean, I think Van, did a good summary. The as he said, this last one was a little weird because with the lockdowns and the pandemic, we couldn't really, work things out in the room. So that was, certainly a missed feeling. I don't think it affected the quality of the record. We love the record, but it was not, the way we prefer to work. So hopefully now, if things stay relatively safe in the world, we can, as we demo, follow the process that Van outlined in his summary. As we demo these songs, we'll workshop them in the room, and that always feels good to kind of just build slowly and get that understanding from the inside out. From playing them and tweaking things, rearranging things, and refining. It's a process.
So these songs that are demoed originally, how complete are they in terms of song structure?
They're usually very complete, especially Van's demos. He comes from an audio engineering background, so we joke, but it's true that, I mean, a lot of his demos sound like other bands' finished songs. So which is great because you really don't have to guess about, imagine what it's going to sound like, or kind of, peer through a bad recording or whatever. But that doesn't mean they don't change. And to your question about structure, often the structure changes a lot. Maybe from the first demo, we might, cut a whole parts or add parts, or, take out a whole riff that's not working. So the structure is definitely up for, editing, but the sound is often very finished, or maybe not finished, but, very presentable, not lo-fi.
And as for the songs that are culled from this process, what happens to the ones that we don't hear on the record?
They go somewhere in our hard drives and they die, I think. I mean, they are there. I don't know. To be honest with you, I haven't seen that happen yet, but I would really like that to happen for this album, because me and Scott like have some like favorite songs that we didn't manage to finish. Like there were a couple of songs, I think one of them anyway, that we're talking about, that we were trying so hard to finish that song, but it wasn't working, and we didn't wanna. We wanna do it justice in a way, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter. Like if we the new song, like whenever we write songs, like if there is something that needs to come out, it's gonna come out in some other form. So I don't know. If we might go back and take some inspiration from those old songs, but we can always write other songs that are more appropriate for us in the now.
So let's talk about Voices of the Cronian Moon. It is your second album, and it was released on March 25th of this year through Season of Mist. Going into this album, did you feel any desire to do anything different from your first album, Darkness, Silence, Mirror, Flame?
I think I don't think there was any radical reimagining or plan to change anything, but it does sound different. I think it sounds different. It's more focused, and there was some intention behind. We did want to edit a little more severely, I guess. We wanted to really, trim the songs down as much as we could, get them not short for short's sake, but just very direct, no wasted moments, and I think we achieved that. It's a pretty compact album. So that was probably the only like maybe goal or thing we had in mind while coming up with things. But I think there wasn't a grand plan. It just evolved naturally. To it sounds cliche, but I think it's more melodic. That that's something I think we wanted to bring out. It's maybe a little less dark than the first album. It has a slightly more, dare I say, positive vibe, just even in the sound and the music and the melodies. But I don't think we laid out a map to get there. It's just kind of that's what came out, and especially as we narrow down the demos to this group of songs. But it's not all that either. I mean, there's something like Thorns, a very dark song, very very moody. So there's still a palette of different moods on it.
I'm glad that you brought up Thorns. Thorns is a very interesting song, especially within the scope of uh, the sound that you guys are doing. Can you tell me a little bit about that song in particular and the writing process for that song, or maybe the intentions going into creating Thorns?
So this song actually started from a drum beat that Patrick was working on. So I don't remember if I think he was just playing with it. I basically I think I asked him at that time to just come up with drum riffs. Because we were all coming up with ideas, and he was kind of always laying drums over our our riffs. So I wanted to start from him, something from him anyway, and that was what he came up with. I don't know if he's like very happy that he came up with that, because it's not an easy song to play, but so yeah, I took that and I just worked some riffs over it, and then we started we started listening to the demos and making changes and all that. Yeah, what I really like about this song is that we kept a very early structure. I mean, this structure came from the demos, and I don't know if anybody noticed or if anybody is gonna notice, but it's very weird that the song is like never the same. The riff changes constantly, kinda. So yeah, for me also that there are some hidden. Again, I'm gonna mention Meshuggah. There's a very clear hidden reference to very clear hidden. I don't know if that makes sense, but there's an obvious reference to Bleed. I think the whole bendy thing that happens. Yeah, I mean that song comes at a point on the album where there is a clear turn. Like for me, the way I like to think about it, maybe Scott thinks about it a different way. I think that at that point we're not in the domain of the living. So this is after the hero tale that we go through the album. We're in a limbo place where souls come and go, and I feel that it fits so well the mood, because it doesn't feel like a normal song. It feels so far off anyway.
Scott, did
I
you
don't
want
know
to
if
add to
that was
that?
enough. Yeah.
No, I think that's a great description, and I agree that the mood, it's the perfect it's like the right time on the record, and just as even as far as the sequencing goes, it's like it has impact because it definitely stands out a little bit from the rest of the songs that maybe are a little more similar in kind of the mood, and that this one's darker and it's got that weird rhythm, and it really does feel like off kilter or kind of mysterious in some way, which is a great vibe, and I'm glad we got it on there to kind of have that variety.
Yeah, one more note I want to add is that the ending of the song, where there is this guitar lead, that drum beat that is happening under that guitar lead is also something that Pat came up with, and it was so extravagant, and I didn't know how we would make it fit the song, because he took it to one step further. And the coolest thing is that guitar lead was written for that part because of the drums, and not the other way around, which is very unusual.
I mean, the song is very rhythmically based, which I think is one of the reasons why it stands out. And I think the Meshuggah comparison is interesting, but it also reminds me a lot of like classic heavy metal songs, like Orgasmatron, or maybe some of the stuff on British Steel, which were also very rhythmic, very much about that chugga kind of riff. And I think, when people think of heavy metal, they probably have in their minds, these classic Maiden songs, which were very fast and very, shreddy in terms of the guitar work. But I think what I like about Nite is, the spirit of classic heavy metal was always very experimental and very open to different influences. Even like, a lot of heavy metal kind of sprang out of 70s prog, and so there was always this movement towards trying new things, and trying to make the ideas just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a great point. I think something Van has actually said when we, just during writing discussions and as we're shaping things, it's sort of I'm forgetting the wording, but just the idea being like, we're not going to limit ourselves. We're going to do what we want to do. It's going to sound like Nite because of who we are, and just all the things that we bring to the table individually and as a group. But we're just going to try different things, and I think that kind of goes with what you're saying about, it can have, the metal can have all these different colors and sounds to it, and just like the old bands did. Maiden did, Alexander the Great and all these, weird, kind of odd songs, or Rime of the Ancient Mariner. It covers a lot of ground. So yeah, it kind of sets that stage that you can play with things, and you can spread your wings and try different stuff. Or even like on this album, my brain just blanked. Yep, lost it. I was going to talk about another song, I'm just too tired, freezing up.
Maybe Edge of the Night, but
yes, there you go.
Yeah.
There you go. That was the other, sort of not odd, but just it has a different mood than some of the other songs. It has that triplet feel throughout, or it's a gallop feel, it's not a triplet, and kind of some haunting, slow melodic guitar over top, and it's a great counterbalance to some of the more direct songs, the more classic traditional songs.
Yeah, if I may add something that something that I remember from when we were working on the early days of working on Voices of the Crown and Moon. Like I remember that we did a first album that was very horror themed and very, very dark and very traditional black metal themed anyway. With the heavy metal music though, with the old school heavy metal music going on. But anyway, I remember thinking that we're kind of cornered playing heavy metal, and we're cornered because we cannot move outside the horror genre, and I felt really annoyed by that. Like the whole point of heavy metal, in my opinion, is that the whole thing that I love about it is how far out it is. Like you can go, like you can do whatever you want, really. I mean, and I think we have left that behind a little bit, because nowadays anything that doesn't have like blood, horror, satanism, rituals, and chains and cages and whatnot, like is not metal enough. Like what's going on here? You know what I mean? The whole point was for metal to just break the norms and just think outside the box, not like make another box for ourselves. And I've also heard like Tobias from Ghost mention that, and it was like I just saw him say that in a recent interview, which was interesting. And somebody like Tobias comes out and does something different, and the whole world, I mean, half the world like loves him and everything, and the other half wants to fucking kill him, because he's doing something different. It's like, calm down, you know what I mean? Like what Maiden were doing and what the priests were doing back then, they were outrageous for what was going on in the mainstream. So yeah, breaking out of the norm and just reminding people that heavy metal is not only that; it can be anything you want it to be. Is a big part of the current mission anyway of this crew.
So you mentioned a hero narrative for this album. Is there an overarching theme or maybe even like a concept behind the album?
Yeah, there is. This is what we can call a concept album. I think there's a very clear story that we're talking about here. So it's just a story we came up with, but the mechanisms behind it, the vehicles behind the story are very universal and are not very different from the archetypes and the symbology we used on the first album, although it was clearly more occult and esoteric back then. But esotericism is something that I don't think we will ever be able to escape, and we don't really want to. But so it's our take on the hero's tale, or the quest for the Holy Grail, or the Odyssey, or the hero that goes north to fight the beast or something. It's the same universal myth of human life, basically. Like, this is how humanity basically tries to reflect upon the fact that we're born and we're dying every day until we completely die. And so yeah, there are some very clear moments on the album, some very clear milestones. So every song has a very clear meaning behind it, but that really doesn't really matter for the audience, because at the end of the day, everybody's gonna hopefully make the songs their own, their own. So what Heliopolis means to me doesn't really matter to anybody else. If Heliopolis means something to you, great, awesome. If the quest towards the sun means something to you, fantastic. But yeah, I hope that people who get into the album are inspired to look behind those little keys, those clues, or little doors anyway, and find out for themselves what these archetypes mean to them, not to me, or to Scott, or to Pat, or to Avi.
And at what point in the writing process does the narrative and the lyrics come in? Do you guys already have the album more or less fleshed out once you start writing the lyrics?
I would say that the music comes first. I mean, there may be lyrical ideas and titles. Titles are often a good thing to kind of set the tone, or kind of try to narrow in or focus in on what this song feels like, or what kind of mood you're trying to get across. And I think the vocals and actual lyrics tend to come later. I mean, there are always exceptions, and maybe a part, even just a vocal pattern is kind of in mind right when the guitars are created. But I think we generally proceed music first and then lyrics later.
I'd like to speak a little bit more about the recording of this album. Van, you handled most of this yourself, right? In terms of the engineering side and the actual mixing and mastering.
That is correct. Yeah. Yeah, I have extensive experience on the subject. Like, I've worked professionally for I don't know, 20 something years. I don't really do that many albums anymore. I have thankfully transitioned. No, like, I'm just joking, but I just it happens that I don't really work on that many albums anymore, because I just focused more on teaching music, to be honest with you. But yeah, I've done a lot of heavy metal albums, and especially when I was living in Germany, I was traveling a lot to, like, Norway and Sweden and all those places, and I had done a lot of metal albums. So this is right up my alley. And yeah, I took care of the recording and mix down process for this album and the first album. And unless we become extremely successful, maybe the third one, because the truth is that it's a matter of budget. Like we cannot afford at this stage of our careers to hire someone for the amount of time that I worked on this album. So we don't really want to go in a studio for a couple of days, bang it out, and then take a mix down and leave. That's not how we do things. And that's also why I became a sound engineer, because I realized that when I first did my first when I did my first demo with my first band when I was 15, I remember that it costed like all the money that we all had for 2 songs. And I thought that was outrageous, and I realized that it's not gonna fly. I can figure it out. And then I did go to school, of course, and and all that. But for me, like, and producing is part of the songwriting process, to be honest with you. I'm not a traditional sound engineer, in the sense that all my sound engineering friends think that I'm a little bit crazy, and all my musician friends think that I'm a little bit crazy also. So I'm happy where I am. Everybody thinks I'm crazy, in other words. So yeah, I mean, forging the song, I think, is very important. We could do it in the studio and then go out and do everything in 8 hours or something, as sometimes I've done albums like that. But I don't know. We live in 2022, we all have like computers that are like infinitely more powerful than NORAD was when I was growing up. So we can do it at home,
Do you have your own studio?
Yeah, I have my own. Yeah, I have my own home studio. It's nothing crazy, but it's a treated room with really nice monitors and a really powerful computer and very minimal outboard, which is kind of the same thing that like every studio that I've been to lately. There are a few old school studios that are surviving, and it's really sad that all the studios are dying out. But there are studios that cost like $500,000, in an industry that nobody makes money other than the record labels. So that the major record labels. Let me make that correction. Like so it's not sustainable. So it makes sense. Yeah, and I don't want to talk about Billie Eilish on a heavy metal podcast, but you saw what happened. Billie Eilish and her brother got a Grammy from their bedroom. So good for them.
Yeah, that's the way things are going, I guess. I mean, almost everything can be done on a laptop at this point, so drums aside, you can really do a lot.
Usually when I speak to a band who has a member of the band handling most of the production or recording duties, the main benefit is that you don't have to, well, obviously the cost, which you referred to, but you don't have to explain to an outside party what the sound in your head is. Do you know what I mean? Like, you have a better sense of what you're going for, and you can capture those sounds yourself. As you alluded to, maybe working with other producers in the future, are you at all hesitant about bringing somebody from outside and having them maybe make Nite sound like something that you're not that comfortable with it sounding?
I'm gonna take this one. I think I would say over my dead cold hands, as the idiot said about his gun. Anyway, but yeah, I think like production. I think is the last thing that somebody that is like working on the engineering side of this. thing, and I can totally, focus on other things. But the production side of this, as I said before, I think it's part of the songwriting, and it's something that we all do. That's why the band is like credited as co-producing this thing with me, is because we know what we want to do. Like we have a very clear vision of what we want to do. So yeah, that I cannot see that happening unless I'm deaf or something. I don't know. Like, Scott, if you want to chime in, sorry that
No,
I
I think that I
that
think you were the correct person to speak about that. I mean, to I guess come at it from another way, it's always good to get opinions, and we did that on this. Van mentioned earlier that we sought advice from trusted insider kind of people, people close to the band that have good ideas and good backgrounds in the type of music and are familiar with what we already sound like. So it's always like anything, it's you get too close to it and you kind of maybe lose your perspective for a minute, and it's good to bounce ideas off people. But as Van said, I think we know what we want to sound like. Van especially has a very clear vision in mind for the sound, and a way, and the skill and the sort of know how to translate that from a nebulous idea into an actual mix. So I think we're covered there, and probably that won't change.
So let's talk about that sound. At the beginning of our conversation, we talked about Nite being this, classic heavy metal, but with a modern twist to it. A blackened kind of element to it. In terms of capturing your songs and presenting your songs to the world, how much of that classic heavy metal sound were you hoping to capture? Because to me, this isn't a retro album at all. Like, this is, there are definitely elements of, like, I mentioned that, I hear a lot of Priest in your sound, maybe even a little bit of Motorhead, but this to me is not a retro album. Like, this isn't like a retro thrash kind of retro metal kind of throwback album.
Mm-hmm. That's great to hear. I mean, that kind of hopefully means we achieved what we wanted, which is, I mean, it's inspired and rooted in kind of what we grew up with, but hopefully not a copy or sort of a costume that we're wearing. Just like, oh, we want to act like it's still 85 and wear ripped jeans and do that. So I think you're right to hear those influences. There's a little bit of Priest, there's Motorhead, there's Wasp, but there's Maiden, and that's coming through in the way the riffs are constructed, and just the way the even the verse chorus kind of patterns are pretty traditional, like that era was. But we're not like trying to emulate tones of that time. Like, we're not going into that sort of replicating mode, which some bands do well, and I appreciate some of that in just what I listen to. But we're not trying to like capture like a specific, like, we want to sound like 87 and this this exact production style, or aligning too closely with any genre, really. I mean, obviously it's heavy metal, you can compare it to things, but we're not trying to be like a certain kind of thrash, or a certain kind of there's certain sound. You could be Teutonic thrash, right? You could try to be like Creator, or you could do certain things very specifically, and we don't have any of that in mind. It's broader, and it's more a sum of some of the parts, to make hopefully something that's a little bit fresh and isn't all 80s too. I mean, obviously we keep referring to that, but it's everything. I mean, we probably more technically grew up in the 90s as far as our age, and so it's pulling in lots of stuff into the present.
And did you want to say anything about the sound? Maybe
Yeah,
just
the
maybe just
sound.
from a mixing or a mastering perspective.
Yeah, the sound is. I think Scott covered it beautifully.
Mhm.
I think it's exactly that. We didn't really try to do anything. We didn't really try to do anything. We didn't really try to replicate the era of our influence. Like that's the beauty, I think, behind Night in general, is that we're not really forcing anything. We're just not holding back anything. That's exactly what we want to play, what we like, and the kind of sounds we like. And I think that the sound of the band, to give you a little look behind the curtain, is that we have the option to make the album sound however we want to sound. So we could make it sound like Rammstein, or we could make it sound like UFO from the 70s, But yeah, there is some controlled approach there on my part. I don't want to like add like triggers on the drums. Like I don't really think that fits our sound, or at least it doesn't fit where we are in these states and what is going on in 2022. So we do take into account what is happening out there. And I personally really enjoy that I listen to the album now that it's out on Spotify, and I really like how it sounds when other things come before it and after it. And I love that we're on that scene and we sound so different, but like it's so good different. I'm really happy with how the album came out. That means anyway. So one last thing I want to say is that the core of our sound is also the core of who we are, and we are a live band. Like we go on stage with amps and with a very loud drummer, who's a very cool person, but he's very loud, and we love it that he's very loud. So the amps are very loud, and the bass is very loud, and the voice is very loud, and the room is not that big nowadays, and it might get bigger, but it's usually packed and there's a lot of people, and that thing is happening. So that thing is the same thing that we try to bring on the album. We're not playing in the Royal Albert Hall, we don't play with boutique amps. We play with things that we throw in a van, and we drive around the country, and we we take out of the van, we put them on a stage, we crank them up, play the show, try to not pass out, eat, sleep, and do the same thing. So that's what we're trying to keep it real. In other words, we're trying to put on the album who we are, with maybe a few dozen more guitars than we have in the band. A little bit too much double tracking going on.
Well, speaking of playing live, you guys have some dates and a tour coming up. Do you want to tell me or tell listeners anything about uh, the tour supporting Bewitcher and the release show that you guys have?
Sure. Yes, we have an album release show locally here in San Francisco on April 8th at the Parkside. And then we're going out with the awesome Bewitcher. We're going to support them on their tour. I believe it starts April 16th, or actually 17th through
Yeah,
the 29th.
29.
And it's kind of going through the Western and Southern United States, and it's basically going to and from the Hell's Heroes Festival in Houston, Texas, on the middle weekend. We play the 21st, and it goes through the 23rd, and that's going to be a great kind of traditional heavy metal festival. We're really excited to play, and this will be our first real touring that we've done, not by design, but the timing of our first record, it literally came out the week that lockdown happened. So, the world changed and everything was on hold. So we didn't get to really do proper touring for the first album. So this is where we're going to start.
And so you spoke about the importance of the live experience, Van. How would you say, what is the live experience for Nite? I mean, what do you want people to experience when they see you?
Um, we're open for people to like share the same thing. And for me, it's like what gets me out of bed every day. Like this is the thing that I love most in the world. This feeling of this like transcendental fantasy landscapes, with like that's where I go every time I hear like Power Slave. That's I am instantly transported into that world. The live experience is a little bit more ecstatic than what I experience when we're at home. It's a hard one, like to put into words to me, because like music is, to be honest with you, I don't want to sound like a mambo jumbo person, but music is a very sacred thing to me, and I think words don't do it justice. And
Oops.
Get some lag.
Yeah.
Yeah. That thing, what happens when we slide? You could something that you should.
Sorry, Van. You're cutting out a little bit. Scott, I'm going to jump to you.
Sure.
What do you like about the live experience, or bringing Nite to an actual audience?
Yeah, just even just on a nuts and bolts practical level, we're at a a certain level right now where we're playing not huge rooms, and so it's going to have that club feel, and as Ben kind of talked about before, it's going to be amps and drums and us on stage, and hopefully still with a simple setup conveying the energy and the power of the music, and hopefully connecting people. We're gonna we have ambition to add to the stage presentation, and maybe be a little more elaborate with that, but at this stage we have to keep it pretty sparse, and just hopefully develop it as we go. But right now we're just excited to get out there and do it, and just really really looking forward to playing these songs and playing new songs. I mean, the album's not new to us, but really no one's heard this material live, so we're really eager to get out there and play the Crony Moon songs in front of people.
And do you want to say anything about your touring partners, Bewitcher? I'm actually not that familiar with them.
They're great. They put on an amazing show. It's 3-piece. It's got that Motorhead, Venom, kind of very just vicious, and but it's still catchy. And I've actually never seen them myself, so I'm looking forward to seeing them a lot on the in a 2-week time frame.
Capital H, capital M, heavy metal.
Exactly.
So Voices of the Cronian Moon is out now through Season of Mist Records. Van and Scott, how can people order the album? What's the best way to get it?
Depends on. So the best way to go about it is, I think, to go to the Season of Mist website, and depending on where you are, you're gonna be redirected to the correct shop for you, so you don't pay $1 million or euros or whatever you're paying into in shipping. If you're in the US, you can also check out our Bandcamp page. So you can find us online as Nite Metal, so NITE Metal, like heavy metal music. So we're on like all social media platforms like that, or you can find the album on nitemetal.bandcamp.com anyway. And the album, of course, is on all streaming platforms and on YouTube and whatnot.
So I believe all the limited edition vinyl is sold out, but do you want to say anything about the physical releases that Season of Mist created for this release?
Yeah, we're really excited about it, and we didn't really talk about the artwork, but we're
Oh, feel free,
really,
feel free.
yeah,
The artwork is actually quite striking.
Yeah, this is a great, segue to that. I just think, speaking of the packaging, yeah, it's colorful, it stands out, and we worked with an artist from Spain called Deih, who really brought some unique ideas, and we didn't really tell him what to do. We gave him some ideas and the music, and he came up with some great concepts, and kind of working in our mascot, so to speak, like the hooded figure that's also on the cover of the first record, kind of presenting that figure in a very different way, very unique way on this cover. And yeah, and Season of Mist was fully behind that, and loved the art also. And I actually don't have my vinyl yet, but I'm looking forward to to opening it up when it arrives.
Yeah, I actually have one here. And yeah, we're really happy with how the album came out. I mean, what we set out to do, I think, again, comes from the time we were growing up, and that whole experience of holding the album when you're listening to the music, and like noticing all the little details. The cover is such an amazing thing to look at, and also like all the work that the Season of Mist did on the inside and on the lyrics page and all that is just amazing, and we couldn't be happier with that. And the quality of the production is really fantastic. Not that our first album wasn't fantastic, but this is also.
I mean, we didn't speak about Season of Mist very much, but this is your first album for them. Do you want to say anything about how they got involved with this release? Scott, I think I might have to jump to you.
Sure. Yeah, it was. I'm trying to honestly recreate how it. I mean, obviously, our first record came out on Creator Destructor, which was a great launching pad for us, and for the second one, we were, doing the usual thing, and seeing if people, other labels might be interested. Try to expand our reach to sort of a bigger platform, bigger audience. And I believe, Van can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe Season of Mist actually came to us. They whether it was from something we sent out or just organically through the metal ecosystem, they were excited about what they heard, and wanted to talk about where we could, how we could partner up with them.
And if people want to follow Nite online, what is the best way to do that? How can people keep up to date with what you guys are doing?
I think through the common platforms like Instagram and Facebook and Twitter, maybe. Like all of these profiles are, again, Nite Metal, so NITEMETAL, Nite Metal.
Capital M Metal, right?
That's right.
Excellent. Is there anything else you guys want to say?
Thanks. Thanks for having us on. It's great to be doing, press for this record, and it's fun to talk about it. And appreciate your questions and your insights. And we hope everyone that checks out the album enjoys it. And we hope to see you, both in the US and maybe eventually other parts of the world. We'll see how things go.
Yeah, thank you for having us, and to anybody who's listening, who's in the US, we hope to see you in one of our upcoming shows, and I hope the world enjoys our album, because we put a lot of work into it, and we really love it, and we would love people to hear it. So go check it out.